Fantastic. So I suggest we start, and we start with a very warm welcome from my side to today's online discussion, working remotely, and how to keep the momentum going in 2021. We are hosting this webinar once a month. We call it Business Success Skills Webinar because we really, focus these webinars on business topics. Ultimately, every one of you listening, obviously you're an interior designer, but you're also business owners and you're also entrepreneurs. And it's important that we are able to share all of those experiences with each other. If you have missed one of the webinars, we're hosting them once a month. You can watch them again, or you look us up on YouTube. Also on Instagram, on my Instagram page, Benni_Frowein, you're going to see a link where you can access all past webinars. And if you want to post, a screenshot, please do it. I would love that because just more and more people will hear about it and get the opportunity to join the next time or watch it on YouTube. So feel free about doing that. So now we come to the three exceptional people and creative minds and actually also business powerhouses that are joining me here today. And I would love to introduce them. And Annie in the background has prepared a presentation that will show spaces of each of the three panelists that are joining me today. And I would love to start with you, Mikel. Mikel is New York based and is known for crafting luxe yin-yang spaces that merge rustic, natural materials with polished finishes and details. He was a host on TLC's Trading Spaces and is regularly featured across a broad range of national media. His work has appeared in such publications as House Beautiful, Architectural Digest, and the New York Times. And he launched his first furniture collection in January with Yosemite Home Decor, which also is really beautiful. Check it out if you haven't done that so far. Mikel, thank you for joining. It's a real pleasure having you here today.
Thank you for having me. It's so different seeing your work on the screen. I'm like, oh my gosh, did I do that? So
it looks good, no?
I'm not mad at it. Either the photographer or my assistant, one of us, we're responsible for making this look amazing, but I'm liking this.
We do too. Yeah, then I would love to introduce you, Samantha. Samantha Todhunter began her career as a journalist and an art director for Vogue Australia before moving to the UK and starting her eponymous design firm in 2012. Working both at home and internationally, the Samantha Todhunter design team creates interiors that are suffused with an easy modern glamour, creating layers of luxurious laid-back chic underpinned with traditional flourishes. The studio is included in House & Garden's prestigious top 100 list of interior designers and is also part of the First Steps family and Countries and Townhouses 50 Finest. Samantha, thank you very much for joining today. Also, your interior shots look gorgeous.
I agree with Mikel. It's great seeing them like this.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time today to join us.
A pleasure, always.
And then last but not least, Sara Barney, an Austin native. Sara started her career working in the entertainment and sports industry in LA before returning to Austin to start her own interior design firm, Band Design Interiors. Her spaces are effortless, approachable, interesting, and purposeful, and are defined by the fluid mix of high and low pieces. She was named one of Fortune's magazine's most powerful women, Next Generation, one of Austin's monthly Women to Watch, and is a member of the American Society of Interior Designers and the Female Founder Collective. Sara, thank you very much for joining us today from Austin.
Thanks, and thanks for making me look fancy here.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to have you three with me here today. And before we jump now in all the questions, I have two more logistical topics to say. So number one is I think we're going to do a conversation 30, 40 minutes for everyone who is watching. I prepared a couple of questions that we're going to go through, but I totally understand, and I hope actually for the case that you have a lot of questions. If you hover with your mouse over the screen, you see at the bottom the Q&A button. Just feel free to enter your questions there, and I try to weave them in as I can, or to ask those questions at the end. Try to be short, because I have to read, speak, and read at the same time, and you make my life much easier if you keep the question short. So you three, are we ready to go?
Let's do
Yep.
it.
Let's roll.
Mikel, I started with the introduction with you, so why don't I just also start the first question with you? I would love to know how you have experiencing professionally the lockdown and increased severity of the pandemic over the last, I would say, 6 to 8 weeks. How has your business gone with all those ups and downs?
Oh gosh. Okay. So let's be honest, right? The first couple of months, I was just like, oh my gosh, I think I'm going to have to go get like a new job and bag groceries. I was very nervous. But I will say, like, as the months begin to go on, things got much better, and I began to revamp my business model. And so for me, it was scary in the beginning, but honestly, things changed in a trajectory that I wasn't prepared for. And so I've been doing a lot of now like virtual, or at least in the beginning, a lot of like virtual consultations, and clients, you know, they were sitting in their homes, and now their coworkers have become like their children. And so we had these like co-work spaces. And so it actually turned out really great for me. I was nervous in the beginning, but of late, I think now people are just stuck in their houses and they're tired of looking at these incomplete projects. And so it's been, I hate to sound like this, but for me, it's actually helped my business. I was nervous in the beginning, but it's helped now.
And did you feel a difference now with the wherever we are, third, fourth, fifth lockdown over the last weeks, or is this now just the new normal?
Yes, I have to acknowledge the fact that I do feel a difference, but at the same time, I feel like we're going on a year now. So at this point, you have two options. Either you complain about it or you adjust. And so for me, it's just really been an adjust. Like, this has now become the new norm, and I can't, as much as I would love to sit on my sofa and cry up under my blanket, I can't do that. So I've just had to adjust my business model. So yes, there are different constraints. I have to work smarter, I have to work differently, but I think every generation has something that they go through, some type of, crazy plague, and this is ours. And so honestly, I have shifted my thought process, and it's like, this is not leaving right now. You have to continue to pay the mortgage and you got to work. So I've just honestly shifted my thought process, and that's helped me a lot.
Yeah, thank you. Sara, how have you been experiencing the lockdown and the pandemic, let's say over the last 2-3 months, now that we're almost a year in?
I mean, kind of say like the same sort of thing that Mikel's saying. It's like, I don't want to say it's been the best thing that's happened to our business, but it's kind of the best thing that's happened to our business. It's been an adjustment. I was never actually scared, and I don't know if that was just pure ignorance or what, but it was just like, oh yeah, okay, we're just moving along, just another day. But we have had to pivot and we have had to change. But from what I've learned is that clients now don't want us not there. They want us around, and they want us to fix their homes, and they want us to be there to help make their spaces better. So it has, I think, helped gain almost an appreciation for what we do in a way that maybe was lacking before.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. I mean, I would love, we have such a geographical dispersion here on the panel because Sara, you're in Austin, Mikel, you're in New York. Samantha, you are in the UK. Share with us a little bit how this has been for you, for your business, but also in the UK in general.
Well, I'm not going to lie. When we were thrown into lockdown 3.0 in January, I suppose at the end of last year, as a business, we were saying, do you know what? We've done really well. We've made it work. We're digitally incredibly competent. We can design remotely, as Mikel and Sara have said. I think for me, doing it 3 times now, and it's dark and it's cold and everyone has got January blues, I am finding it slightly more challenging. But, you know, we've perfected how we worked in lockdown 1. We're really good at it now. And as Sara pointed out, clients don't want to stare at their 4 walls anymore, and they are reaching out a lot, even if it's just one room in the house, or is it the whole house? But so from that aspect, it's been great. But, you know, nothing beats being in your studio and having all your resources to hand, you know, and having your staff with you, your team. They're your best friends. You work with them all day, all the time, and you create so much together. Doing that on Zoom is slightly different, but we're doing it. And I'm just eternally positive. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. We will beat this. And you've just got to keep going.
Yeah, I mean, I think actually it's a big advantage for our industry also that we all need to keep it going, you know, because we all have our businesses, whether you're on the vendor side or whether you're on the interior designer side. And thankfully, a lot of people are at home and realize how much more important it becomes to them. I said this a little earlier, you know, it's so, at least for me, it's so easy to forget that we are just starting a new year. I feel like it's already July, just the weather doesn't come around. Samantha, maybe just starting with you again right away, you know, what's your professional New Year's resolutions for 2021?
Well, we launched a furniture collection right between lockdown 1, lockdown 2, and lockdown 3 in there, which we managed to get photographed. And that is my big New Year aim, is to get it out there in front of everybody. We're really proud of it. So that's been really exciting. And I just think my resolution is to, you know, get up every day and be positive and design beautiful stuff and just, you know, keep going. I think that's all we can do. So that's my main resolution, is to keep my team happy, keep the projects flowing, keep designing as well as we can, and look forward to the end of 2021.
Wasn't that already, you know, the resolution for
Exactly.
2020?
Exactly.
Mikel, what is your professional New Year's resolutions or resolutions?
Mikel's resolution this year is to make it, and I'm just going to be frank with you. I'm a very frank person. Is to make as much money as he can, and I need to do it all virtually. When I tell you, honestly, I am milking this opportunity right now. I've worked with so many brands now in a different capacity, and I'm just learning. I'm just appreciative right now, because what this pandemic did for me was allow me to stretch my business model. And so I've really just been focusing on how can I make the best of what I'm in right now. It's not changing. And so I've really just been focusing on how to like really take advantage of what I have right now and just to keep moving forward. And so that's been the biggest thing for Mikel Welch Designs. It's like, how do we flip this and make it work for us? And that's honestly how I'm just moving forward with that.
And I'm going to have more questions with regards to that for sure, because I'm sure that everyone is dying to understand, you know, how you're stretching it and how you're revamping your business model. But before we get there, I would love to hear from Sara. You know, Sara, what's your New Year's resolution for 2020 on the professional level?
Well, I'm sort of picking back up off of like some of the resolutions I had for last year that sort of got stomped on in the middle of March. What for us specifically, we were planning to grow in the real estate space. Austin's a pretty crazy market from a real estate perspective. So we were supposed to be taking on more house flipping and new builds in the new year, last year, and that kind of all went away. So that's a big target for me in the next year, is really expanding our real estate portfolio.
Interesting. It's very interesting because Sara, maybe on that note, you know, I do have a lot of friends that moved, you know, especially away from New York into this, you know, to Florida, to the South, actually, you know, and we actually also have interior designers, you know, would suddenly call us from Georgia that were before in New York. And how is Austin experiencing that? Is that, you know, do you have a big?
Oh my gosh. It's crazy here. I mean, it's absolutely insanity. The housing market is, there is no inventory because everybody's moving here, and Tesla, Oracle, HP, Apple have all announced huge either headquarters or campuses here in the last 6 months. So literally every single house is under contract to somebody from California right now. And I'm sitting here in a client's house at an install, and they moved here from New York. So yeah, it's insane. It's not like anything it's not even normal. It's nothing I've ever experienced before. It's pretty bizarre.
So then let me ask you the next question, because I think we might already know the answer, how you look at it. Do you believe then 2021 is for you the year of interior design, or do you think it's rather going to be a struggle, or maybe a combo?
There's struggle in the logistics, because that's definitely something we've experienced a lot of. But in terms of the business and the growth from a client perspective, I think it's going to be an explosion.
What are you experiencing on the logistics? If you share a little bit more specifics, so that we can all like see whether it applies to ourselves too. You know?
I'm sure it does. Nothing is available. Nothing is in stock. We can't get anything. Nothing is available. And I mean, that's true outside of what we do. You know, back in when the pandemic started, toilet paper wasn't available. Like, they're just the supply for everything. The supply chain problems have trickled down to us now. And so everything's back ordered. Everything's out of stock. Everything is, you know, taking just 3 times longer than it normally does.
Interesting. Samantha, how are you experiencing that? Do you think 2021 will be the year of interior design, or rather a struggle? Do you also think it's kind of a split?
I think definitely a split. I think, reflecting what Sara and Mikel have said, you know, we have adapted our business models. We are getting very proficient, getting ourselves out there digitally. Our websites are becoming much more interactive, and they're speaking to the scenario that we're in now. The struggle, I think, certainly shipping is a nightmare for us. As Sara said, I have some chairs which we ordered last March. They are still not installed because they've got caught up in this terrible supply chain where warehouses have half the amount of staff, where the ships are stuck at ports. We have Brexit to contend with. You know, there's stacks of stuff. So they are hurdles that, you know, we have to get smart about. But, you know, yeah, I mean, I think we have to be positive. People still want their homes doing, you know, and particularly if we're stuck and looking at 4 walls, or our clients are much more, I think we have to benefit from that ultimately.
Let me ask you a short question before, Mikel, we let you answer that question. But how do you explain to your clients those chairs from March 2020? Because I'm sure that a lot of people watching right now, you know, run into those problems too. And it's always the question of like, how do you communicate that to your clients without making them furious?
The awful thing is that COVID has become an excuse to cover up all manner of problems that one might experience when installing a house, ordering stuff. And it's become a useful excuse. I mean, I haven't used it as an excuse, and it gets a bit tiresome for the client to hear COVID, COVID, COVID. And all one can do is manage expectations and keep in constant communication with your client. Always, never let them reach out to you and say, where are these chairs, or what's the update? We're always, you know, at the end of every week, there's an email out to every client saying, here's an update, this is where everything's at, and being brutal and black and white about it. And that's all you can do. But having said that, a lot of companies too have adapted unbelievably, and, you know, quick ship is become enormously efficient. Even in the UK, UK suppliers are getting on the quick ship program, which is not something so normal here. It is in America. So, you know, I think there'll be a lot of adaptation, and over the next year, hopefully we won't have the kind of problems that we faced last year.
Interesting.
And stuff.
Interesting. Thank you. Mikel, how would you, which title would you give 2021 if you had a crystal ball?
Now, Benny, you already know where I'm going to go with this. Okay, so yes, let's address this. Is it a mix of both worlds? Like, yes, I do have issues. I have the same delivery issues that every other designer has. But right now, I really feel like my clients have begun to shift and they're a little more realistic about things. And what I appreciate is like before, I felt like my clients, they are always nagging me, right? They always want to know when the deliveries are coming. Like, why is it not here? It should have been here yesterday. Well, now they kind of have to take a step back. And I appreciate that because now they have to take a step back and like at the end of the day, I'm just going to be like frank. We're not curing cancer. We're designing. Like that sofa is not going to make or break like your life right now. There are people who are in the hospital dying. So I think it's caused my clients to now put things into perspective. And so they're a little more patient. And I appreciate that because design is not something that should be rushed. And, I can't control if something is stuck out in the middle of the ocean and well, not the ocean, but, if they're sitting there and, it's at customs and we can't get it. So the clients are a little more appreciative of that. And, the other thing within this is design is a luxury business. So any of our clients who are hiring us right now in the middle of a pandemic, they're not hurting for anything right now. So they can relax and they can wait. And so I appreciate that. And for me, it's also been setting a tone and an expectation. I don't feel bad. Like we're in the middle of a pandemic and you're ordering a sofa. So if you're okay with that, sweetheart, you're going to wait. And it doesn't bother me. Like, I don't feel a sense of urgency because there are other things that there are higher precedents that, in terms of life that are happening right now. So they can wait. They can be patient. It's okay.
Do you communicate that actively when you take on now new projects? Maybe not, you don't use the exact same words, but do you seek that conversation early on?
Absolutely. I don't change my words. Now I may butter it up a little bit differently, slightly, but not really. I mean, at the end of the day, I let them know up front, like we're in the middle of a pandemic and you're ordering furniture. You're going to have to be patient. And I don't think there's a further discussion. I feel like a lot of times designers, we take on this guilt. And why should I feel guilty that you're ordering furniture in the middle of a pandemic? You're going to have to wait. Like, that's what it is. You've got to be patient.
Yeah, it's very interesting. This also this aspect of guilt that you're mentioning, because I obviously speak with my function with a lot of interior designers, and your jobs is to deliver a perfect product. And if it takes longer than it should be, it's almost not perfect anymore, right? And I think it's, I'm taking that away. And the other part that I'm taking away, and Samantha, you mentioned it, and Sara, you mentioned it too, that it's all about communication and proactive communication. And if the client asks you about a piece, it's probably too late. So every one of us should be the one owning that conversation. Then it's probably going to be accepted, from what I understand from you guys. So let's make this a little more specific, and also let's come back a little bit back more to the title of today, how to keep the momentum going. Sara, what initiatives, like specific initiatives, are you putting into place to keep your business strong? I mean, you said that you want to go more into, development and so on, but what are the initiatives now for you to get there? Because I'm sure a lot of people watching this are wondering, okay, so one thing is setting yourself a goal. Now, like, what initiatives are you putting behind?
Yeah, well, for the real estate stuff specifically, because the market is so crazy, that's actually made it a challenge. But it is kind of, it's pinpointing those projects that we think are going to be best for the brand. And so our time, and specifically my time, I mean, all time, is finite. So there's only so many places I can stretch. So a big thing for us is to grow internally. I think since the beginning of the pandemic, we've added 2 new positions, and now we're adding 2 more to our firm. So being able to really spread out the workload to free up more time for me to be able to focus on things outside of just project specific stuff has been a big key for us to be able to keep the wheel going. Otherwise, I will get bogged down in the day to day, like where are those chairs, or what is that, when are you hanging the wallpaper? But now I have a team I can really trust that can handle all of that. I mean, they're all doing the install right now while I'm sitting up here. So I know that, when I get down there, it's going to be all styled and pretty. But so it's trusting in the team is a big piece of it for sure.
Mm-hmm. Samantha, how are you doing that? What are your like super specific initiatives that you want to put into place?
Well, as Sarah said, it's about being very connected to the team, and because we cannot be together in the studio, so I make sure that no one feels isolated and out of the loop. We have daily design meetings. I send them regular cases of wine and gin.
I'm not that good of a boss.
But no, I just keep in touch. I feel like I'm the mother hen, and I want to make sure everyone's not only enjoying what they're doing, feeling tasked and having something to do, but also that they have a direction and they know where they're going, and that this is not just sitting staring at four walls, twiddling their thumbs. So everyone is talked to, looked after, we communicate together. And the minute we can all get back to the studio, that connectivity will be much stronger, I think, through this. But it's the most we can do given our studios are shut. So we're in contact all the time and keeping upbeat and lots of wine.
How is the way how you are trying to gain business, has that changed? Or let me put it that way, how are you trying to get business for 2021?
Well, so social media, interestingly, which I'm a bit of a dinosaur about, I've really got with the program, and I have someone who specifically does it and who's a genius at it. I've got very targeted about that. Now, whether that brings in business or not, but our reach has just gone insane since we started focusing on that part of getting our name out there, our collection of furniture, what we do, the breadth of our work. And similarly, we spent a lot of time working on the website, actually, which felt stagnant, particularly when we couldn't be out there physically. So the website is much more upbeat, interactive. You can connect to us directly through it, things like that. So as much as we can, shouting from the rooftops digitally.
Interesting. Michael, you already alluded to, that you adjust your business, that you're adjusting your business model and so on. This is now your question. We want to know it all. What are you planning on doing, or what are you already doing for 2021 in terms of initiatives?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest thing for me, the biggest shift has been the focus on the internet. Everything from like Instagram and now trying to reach people in a virtual manner. I've been doing a lot more partnerships with brands in general. And a lot of things, honestly, that I have done, because I'm putting myself in like Samantha space, because I think it's a little different in the UK than it is in the US and what we're allowed to do right now. But like, honestly, anybody who's on the line right now, who's in the UK and you're in a place where you're locked and you're isolated, I've tried to do as much as I could within my own home. And that was a lifesaver. And it, in a sense that, for one, it gave me an opportunity to continuously promote the brand. It attached me to some bigger brands that were bigger than myself. And it allowed me an opportunity to connect with a new audience who maybe wasn't exposed to the Mikel Welch brand. And so for me, like, that was the smartest thing that I could do, like in that lockup portion. Here on the US side, like I've worked like here, Benjamin Moore is a really big brand. I've recently worked with them. So it's just, I've really been shifting my model and how I can work with other brands. In terms of the client side, I really started to work on, and which I learned to love, with these virtual consultations where I have a set fee for us to go in. The client is moving around virtually. And then we literally would design the room and we would make packages where the clients could shop the room. And I love that because I don't have to physically go to the client's home, so they don't have to get on my nerves. So it was kind of like the best of both worlds. And so for me, and I hate to say it like this, I have really learned the pandemic has played in my favor, and I did not expect that. But again, it was just shifting that model slightly and just working with what you do have. Like even this opportunity here, you know, to sit here with Schumacher brand. Had the pandemic not happened, I don't know that I would be sitting here like having this dialogue and this conversation with you. So it all spirals into you know, something else. And so that's honestly how I've worked that.
Very interesting. And for everyone who is watching also, we did a webinar on is e-design the new business model or the future business model, something like that, which you can also look up on YouTube. It's been actually really interesting, Mikel, because we talked a lot about what you just described and also about fee structures and how to do those. So for everyone who is interested in that. Excellent. So let's talk about a second, and Sarah, maybe we start with you again. You know, maybe we talk a second about your team, because we were in the first lockdown, and some of us were, some of us weren't. You know, I think it also depends in the U.S., especially from the state you live in. How does working remotely pin out for you and your team after almost a year of training, and especially also hiring new staff? You know, if you don't really have everyone, see each other. And I'm wondering, just like from a culture perspective, in terms of procedures, tell us a little about that, because I'm sure there's a lot of people watching that are struggling with the same logistical challenges.
Yeah, so that was super hard for us in the beginning, just like it was for everyone else. It was especially hard for me because I have 2 little kids. So immediately I was a homeschool teacher and also trying to run a business. So I really leaned in on my team because I was the only mom on staff or anybody with kids on staff to really help support the business, because I was kind of being pulled in a million different directions. We actually are back in the office, and we have been since July, or actually probably since August. We did some sort of hybrids where we had 1 person per day or 2 people per day. And we were always spread out in masks and all of that. And then it got to a point where we were just not feeling productive, and we weren't able to collaborate the way that we normally do, and what works so well for us. And especially with, at the time, 2 new hires who were 2 new designers on staff, kind of coming at it blind and trying to learn us and kind of the way we operated. So we all went back in the office, and we all pushed our desks up against every single wall as far away from one another as we could. And we wore our masks all day long. And then actually in November, everybody got COVID with the exception of 2 of us, even though we did all the precautions and did all the things. So where everybody turned out to be fine, and I'm still thankful we're all in the office, and I don't think anybody regrets that we were in the office. But being back together has been
I think now we lost.
Start. Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you again.
Sorry. Yeah, no, I was just saying that now we're hiring for 2 new positions, so I don't know how that's going to restructure things and change things internally. And what we're expanding our offices right now, space-wise. So there's kind of a lot up in the air there. But I hear Samantha talking about her team, and I totally get that, because that's what we felt. And it's very hard not being together. Very, very hard not being together.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting because, again, I think you in Austin can handle it very differently from you, Samantha, in the UK. Besides, being, let's say, being the mother hen and trying to motivate, your team, how do you, Samantha, how do you work remotely now a year later? Like, is there some tips you can give us, or like your biggest learnings in lockdown 3.0 that we can all listening take away with?
It's very interesting. No doubt nothing beats me and my team bouncing ideas off each other and just sitting around a table and you go, oh my God, what about that? Let's put that in. And what, you just get ideas spontaneously. But we're doing okay. We Zoom, we screen share. I can see the CAD program. I can move stuff around. We kind of, we're being productive. We're actually being productive. We're designing houses and really great stuff. So whilst not being together is not great, I don't feel that we're being unproductive. I think we're doing great things, which, when they're finished and installed, we'll say, wow, we did that remotely and it's possible. And to Mikel's point, doing it remotely with the client. I did a presentation today. We shared the screen. We had this big PDF, 50-page presentation, ran through it, and it was terrific. There was not really any difference to being face-to-face.
Did you send the samples prior and like in envelopes and you told them only open this on page 35, or how did you do that?
No, what we do is we run through it, and then once everything is identified, we get the samples in, put the packs together, and then send them out. There's so much fluidity at the beginning of a project, so it's really presenting our initial ideas, and once we get things pinned, then we'll call in the samples from the London showroom. Schumacher.
Yeah, I hope so. It's just 4 more weeks. But and how do you deal with all the sampling in between your team members? Do you send this to each other, or do you just order now 5 samples so that everyone has a home library? How do you do that?
Essentially, and this was a thing most American websites do so brilliantly on fabrics, and English websites are now doing it, but the digital memo is fantastic. I mean, the quality is amazing. Obviously, you need the look and the feel, but visually it comes up on a presentation really well. And then we just call in the samples, and I'll have a set, designer will have a set, and we discuss it and go from there.
Interesting. Mikel, how are you experiencing the whole remote working? I don't know whether you have everyone. I know that New York, it's like some work in the office, some don't. Tell us a little about that and what tricks and tips you have for us in terms of, training.
So here's the funny part for Mikel. My 2 lead designers don't even live in New York City. So my situation is going to be different than everyone else's, because I already had to work in this manner, in the sense that I already had to work with the showroom to send the samples. But I love it. Honestly, now I will say this, I've incurred a new cost of about $80, maybe that's 100 pounds for our UK people. But now we put everything in a really pretty box, and we ship the box to the client, and we walk through every single piece. But I love it now. I feel like businesses are prepared. Again, like, we are a year into this thing. This is not new. Businesses are equipped to deal with the pandemic. They have the samples ready, which typically before you didn't know, it was dicey. They might not have the samples. But for the most part, most businesses, they have the samples. Like, this is not new. Pandemic has been around for a while. So they have them ready. They'll send them to you. You send them to the client. And I love this. This has been a great shift for me. And what I really like about it is now I'm putting trust in my vendors that I would not have done before. So before, I would have been like, oh my gosh, I need to go. I need to check on everything. But now I can call Schumacher. I can call my rep and say, hey, like, can you pull out your swatches, look at this Ferro and Ball paint, and I need you to help me like match this up. So the trust is different. And I think it's taking us back to those like older days where you trust the professionals. Because honestly, I feel like we've gotten to a place where we treat a lot of showroom reps as if they're just like customer service reps, and they're not. Like, they're artisans in their craft, and they're there to help you beyond just facilitating the order. And so I now have this trust with my vendors where I'm trusting them to help me out. They're a part of the process. And I love that. I love getting that feedback. And to be honest, I like it. It's working.
Thank you. Super helpful also. Yeah, so, I'm trying to pull out a couple of more big challenges from you guys, because I think, that's something that we all deal with all day long, I mean, and that's something, although we all share the passion for design and for making the world a more beautiful place, we also all share entrepreneurial and business owner challenges we are facing. Sara, what is your biggest challenge, and what is your remedy for that?
Well, kind of, I mentioned it earlier. The biggest challenge for our business right now is just the supply versus demand. Everybody wants it and nobody's got it. And so communication is key. And kind of like what Mikel said earlier, if there's nothing I can do about it. It's not my fault that the chair is not here, or something's not available, which is actually the greatest thing you could say, because my hands are completely off. There's literally nothing I could do about this. So it's just trying to instill that patience and constantly educating clients on having to wait for things, because they lived in a world where, the Amazon world, where everything showed up very easily and quickly. And so we're all going to have to wait a little bit longer. So that has been the biggest challenge that we've been facing in the last year, for sure.
Yeah. Samantha, is that also what comes to your mind first, or do you have something else?
No, totally. I mean, everything that has been said. I think one thing I'm struggling with when I relocated, so my little cave that I work in here, which is the tiny little room in the attic, to putting schemes together. I love to have the space and to spread out and to throw stuff on a table. And do you know what I mean? That kind of physical touching the fabric and creating the scheme, having everything at my fingertips. That I miss, because pulling a piece of bronze out and throwing it next to a fabric, a wicker sample, whatever it is. So here, working remotely, whilst the digital memos are brilliant and you can find something, you can call in the samples, it's just not the same. We're doing really well, but I miss that hands-on designing moment a lot. So that for me is a challenge, but we're getting through it and it's working, how we're doing it. But I like the physicality of design.
Yeah, thank you. And Mikel, you said, well, you're trying to look at every challenge as an opportunity earlier, no? So do you have a challenge? Do you feel like there's something you try to cope with?
I mean, yes. I mean, Mikel has the same challenges as everybody on the panel. I think the difference, and I think the difference for me, just in my approach, I just try not to harp on the challenges. But yes, I have the same issues. Like, the deliveries are a hassle. Yes, I do miss having the camaraderie of the entire team being there, like in person. But to be honest, from a business perspective, it's cut a lot of my overhead. So, I mean, yes, I have these issues, but I mean, honestly, and Benni, I don't even say I hate, like, I am what I am with this. I think it's a perspective. You have two choices in this thing. Either you complain about it 10 months later, or you move forward. And I feel like right now, I'm just in a move forward. Like, this is the norm for right now. It's probably not going to change for another 6 months. The lights have to stay on. The rent has to get paid, because I still rent in my New York apartment. So you've got to shift your model. Like, I mean, I can't cry about it. Like, you've got to change it. And I would just challenge anybody who's out there, like, shift your model. Stop harping on like the things that are out of your capacity to change, because if you harp on that, you're going to stay in that and it'll never change. So I just think people have to shift their thought process.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I'm just seeing we got the first two questions in that I would love to ask you guys. And everyone who is watching, I would love to encourage you to also ask questions. We try to get through all of them. So Celia asks, do you feel a need to compensate the client at any level for COVID delays, specifically warehouse storage fees for these delays?
No way.
No.
Okay, the no way answers. I would love for you, Sara, maybe you start, why not, and how, especially if the client brings it up, like, how would you, react? Like, give us a tip.
Listen, I will say from the storage perspective, we have had to be a little bit more adaptable in the sense that now we'll have to do 2, 3, 4 different installs versus one major one, right? And that kind of stinks because, it's not the full pretty package and they get hung up on that. But, name a business where you would feel okay asking for them to cover some of your costs. I feel like this only happens to designers. It's like we're asked to apologize for something that's out of our control all the time. And I would never ask another business, hey, this took longer. Could you just cover that for me? No, there's no reason that we should be covering that cost. No.
Samantha, how are you explaining that to your client if they ever wanted to ask you or did ask you?
Oh, I mean, literally exactly as Sarah said, it's unreasonable to put the impact, the domino impact that COVID's had on our business onto us and expect us to fund it. I think we all have to be reasonable, but I think that is unreasonable to ask, really.
But I think, but I also think now that we all know this can happen, we can address that before it even gets.
We can mitigate it, exactly.
Point, right? I mean, and tell our clients, look, this might happen. This is out of our control. And
yeah.
with that, and Celia, it might also just, not become such an issue going forward. Kathleen asks, what I see in my practice is that people are craving a cozy space. Prior to the pandemic, I felt a lot of design look very similar in social media. Does the panel see a craving for an authentic space? Or is it more just how it was before, just like fill my rooms? Do you have any one of you have an opinion on that?
I've noticed that when we put certain interiors up on our Instagram, the ones that are pink, cozy, soft and squidgy, they go off the charts. And then the very edgy, cooler stuff, which I think is the thing that everyone's going to go nuts about, doesn't have such a huge response. So I definitely think there's something about warm, inviting, cozy that people are gravitating towards. Yeah, interesting.
Mikel, Sarah, any observations on your side? Or you?
Yeah, I mean, there is a bit of that for sure. And it's less designing for entertaining than it used to be, and more for home offices and homeschooling and sort of being prepared if we have to do it all over again at some point.
Johanna, I hope that I pronounced your name correctly, asked, do you all find yourself shopping more locally to curb the shipping challenges?
I would say I would love to do that, and I have tried. It's not so much the shipping challenges, it's the material challenges. Like sofa makers waiting on foam that hasn't come in because of supply. So it's all the pieces that go into the product too that are delayed. So I've tried it, but it's not always the cleanest solution.
And I would, to piggyback off of what Sarah just said, I feel like I find myself, I won't say that I shop a lot locally, but what I do try to do, at least with the accessory portion of my business, if I can, I have been more prone now to, like, out of my own respect, to shop locally, just because I know that these smaller companies are not thriving as well. Because like my sofas, a lot of times, like I just can't get that from a smaller manufacturer. But the smaller goods, yes, I feel like but that's a personal choice. I just rather support, a smaller local shop just because I want them to be there, a year from now. So I am being more cognizant of that.
Interesting. It's very interesting because, we also in our business started, selling more antiques and so on, which went very well because it's just something you can get right away and install right away. So we see actually on everyone a bigger demand there. And I'm sure First Dips and all of those platforms see that too. Tamara asks, what area have you been asked to redecorate more during lockdown? I find it a very interesting question because it also, if we all share that, we can pitch that to our existing contacts. Do you have any specific area that is predominantly being asked for?
Well, I guess the home office is obviously the first thing on everyone's wish list. And I also think adaptable spaces that, you know, should we need to turn our dining room suddenly into family homeschooling, that there's some level of flexibility there. But on the whole, I haven't noticed any specific massive change in a little bit about the home office, but nothing major.
Interesting. Mikel, Sara, did you observe anything, or is it all across the board?
I definitely think home office for sure. I actually am more interested to see how this will change home architecture in the future, and if there will be more 2 offices built into a home, or double workstations, or more built-in workspaces to be accounted for in home architecture going forward.
I agree with Sara. I think at least here in the US, like we had this big boom initially of like open concept, tear this wall down. And now I think people are craving for like, I need some structure. Like I need to be able to close the door so my kids are not running around in my Zoom background. So I do think now we're going to slowly see, not even slowly, I think it's going to be a quick shift into like, we want more defined spaces so that, you know, we can court these rooms off and we don't have these big like open loft style spaces in the middle of suburban lifestyle. Like it just doesn't make sense.
Very interesting. Julie asked, what advice do you have for a beginning designer that has had to shift to another job due to COVID? I would love to come back to work in the interior design industry eventually, because that's what I love. Would you suggest to start for another firm for a while? Would you start to just to jump into the cold water? What would be your suggestions?
Well, I think
I would say now, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Sara.
No, I was just gonna say now's the time to do it. There's the work is there. So it's not super helpful, but now's the time to do it.
I mean, I think the smartest thing is work the resources that you have. Honestly, right now, contingent upon where you are, I don't know what part of the world she lives in, but work your resources. Like if you can't leave your house, like start with your house. Like you need to begin to like put yourself out there. Like if you go on my Instagram, I promise you, you have seen these barn doors at least 30 times. Like, but I repurpose things, I move things around. And I think it's just trying not to make your social media look stale. And I'm joking when I say use the same background, but you know, work what you have. Because the main thing is you need to constantly be putting content out there that's going to draw people to your site. And then I think the other thing within that is, again, offer, like it's all in the hashtags. I'm a big social person and I'm not a millennial. I won't tell my age, but I'm not a millennial by any means. But it's all in those hashtags right now. And I think it's how you preface things on the internet, because you can find ways of you know, building your business. And I'm just going to give an example for myself. When I first started out as an interior designer, this is the other thing I'm going to say. I think people have to take ego out of it. We are a very money-driven society. And I remember my first clients that I got were off of a site called Craigslist that was really big here in the US. And I would donate one free room. And I would design that one room for a client as long as they paid for the furniture. And I did that because it allowed me to build a portfolio because I didn't have clients. And what would happen is I would design that one room and then they would pay me and hire me to do those other rooms. And so I think you just have to kind of like step back for a second, see where you're at in this process, and find a new way to drum people to your site. And don't always equate it to a dollar. You might not get that dollar tomorrow, but if you're patient, it's going to come. And I just think it's about how you shift that model.
Thank you. Samantha, you also started saying something. What's your perspective on that?
I've totally forgotten what we would, what was the question? Oh, what was the question? I'm sorry.
If you had to stop, you know, working about during COVID and now wanted to come back into the industry.
Oh, I'm so sorry. We're talking to Mikel's question. Yeah, I think put yourself out there. And I mean, again, the digital design thing is so key at the moment. To do design schemes, send them to design firms. You know, we all need an extra pair of hands. If you're able, just get your work out there digitally. And, you know, when we all come back to normal, a designer will see that they've received this and they might reach out. I think, as Mikel says, just get out there. Don't hide away and think, oh God, it's too scary right now to put myself forward. Get out there and be bold, and you know, the time will come.
And I also really love the tip that even if you don't have a lot of or no, you know, work that you can show on Instagram, you know, start with your home. Repurpose things, take pictures, try to do, you know, take them well, take vignettes, show how you know, set your table beautifully. You know, I think there's a lot to do that you can just do at home to show that you have an eye. Why don't we finish with the last question? Also again from Johanna, you know, she asked already one. You all have had to adjust business tactics and methods due to the COVID. Are there any of the changes that you plan to keep post-pandemic? I think that's a very interesting question, actually. What would be the one thing you would say, like, I'm going to keep that? Mikel, starting with you.
The one thing I'll definitely keep is my exposure on the internet, social media, etc. I will always continue that. Just putting my work out there and trying to generate business through like virtual meetings and clients. I feel like it's a added step for those who can't maybe afford my entire design service, but they get a smidget of it, and there's less investment on my part.
Sara, what are you going to keep?
I think I'm going to probably stick with some of these virtual tactics, you know, like Samantha was saying, you know, doing presentations online, that doesn't have to go away when we're all able to see each other. And so I think it'll allow both us as a business, myself as a designer, but then also clients to be more flexible in terms of when we can do projects, how we can do projects. So keeping that virtual piece of it, I think, is going to be key and something that's going to continue.
And Samantha, last word from your side.
I was thinking today actually about how for years, you know, we'd make these massive mood boards. And I used to travel the world with these massive cases full of these mood boards that were heavy, and, you know, put them on the plane and all over the place. And I'm thinking, is that going to be a thing of the past now as designers, that we're going to do our digital mood boards? They're going to get slicker and slicker. And then I love Mikel's idea that you send up the sampling in a beautiful box tied up in a bow, and it's like getting a gift. And that will become our new way forward. I think I like that. I think it's less wasteful anyway to do things digitally, and I think it's quicker.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, all good tips. And Mikel, also thank you for actively participating in the chat, because I did miss a couple of questions there because I looked at the Q&A section. Thank you so much, Sara. Thank you so much, Samantha. And thank you so much, Mikel, for joining today. I took a lot with me, and I'm a hobby interior designer on my side. So I take notes the whole time. It was super helpful. And I know that everyone else also really enjoyed it. I wish you a great week. Again, thank you for taking the time. And thank you for everyone who was watching today. Spread the word that we are doing this. It's for the community. It helps everyone. And I hope to see you next month. Thank you.
Thank you, Benny.
Thank you.